The Inquisition supports free mages. What's next? Elves running Halamsharal? Cows milking farmers?
I take it you don't agree.
On the contrary, I approve. Heartily. I do wonder if you've considered what this support of yours will do. For mages in general, I mean. The Inquisition is seen as an authority. You've given southern mages license to, well, be like mages back home.
If that means they're anything like you, I approve.
Ha! There aren't many mages back home like me.
I'd believe that.
I never fit in. Bloodstains are so difficult to clean, you see.
So we're doomed to a future of blood magic then?
Not at first. But you'd be a fool not to see where this could lead. Thing is, the Imperium was once just like the Sun. Templars, proper circles, all that rot. Then it changed. By inches. Not that this is reason to oppress us. Still, my homeland should be a cautionary tale, not a source of inspiration.
It occurs to me that I barely know anything about you.
Beyond my being a mage from Tevinter, you mean?
Beyond that, yes.
And beyond my being so charming and well-dressed, which is obvious to anyone.
I'm well aware of your finer qualities. Believe me.
Of course you are. You're a discerning and intelligent woman, after all. Now, what was I talking about? Ah, yes, me. I am the scion of House Parvis, a product of generations of careful breeding and the repository of its hopes and dreams. Naturally, I despised it all. The lies, the scheming, the illusions of supremacy. That's Tevinter in a nutshell, isn't it? Needless to say, my family was not happy with my choices.
What did you mean by generations of careful breeding?
The great families of Tevinter don't have children. They refine traits, weed out the undesirable, and promote the rest. My mother was chosen for my father because magic runs strongly in her blood. Never mind that they loathed each other. They wanted a son who could become Archon to make House Parvis the envy of the Imperium. They got me. A cautionary tale that you should be careful what you wish for.
Why would your family be upset with your choices?
Because I rejected their idyllic plan. If they had their way, by now I'd be married to some unlucky girl from a powerful family. We'd live in luxurious despair, despising each other as I waited to take my father's place in the Magisterium. I declined the honor, and thus it's best I'm far from home. Less of an embarrassment that way, you see?
I'm getting the impression that you don't care much for your homeland.
On the contrary, I care for my homeland a great deal. There's so much potential. Sadly, we squander it. We refuse to acknowledge how far we've fallen because pretending is easier. We pretend the Canary can be beaten. We pretend that we're superior to everyone, even our own people. Not everyone feels that way. I don't. Sadly, we're the minority.
It just seems... So much of what you say about the Imperium is entirely negative.
It might sound that way. For all our faults, my people have many virtues. We are laden with history and culture. Tevinter is where Thedas truly began, remember? We treasure our past and preserve it. You can walk down a side street and find nothing built during the modern ages. And despite appearances, we care. Deeply. About everything. We have no reserve, not in war and not in love. If I truly believed my homeland was beyond all hope, I wouldn't miss it so much.
Why remain with the Inquisition? Why not go back to Tevinter?
I'm not exactly welcome back home. Not that it matters, I'm quite accustomed to being a pariah. It adds to my charm. I can do more for Tevinter here. If the Venatori succeed, it'll set my homeland back 1,000 years. I'm sure some Magisters would disagree, but that's why we kill them.
I think I've heard enough.
That's too bad. I never tire of talking about myself.
Have you gone to see Alexius yet? He's in the cells.
Not yet, no. I saw him before they locked him up. He looked despondent, broken. Not the man I remember, nor the one I want to. I suppose the Inquisition will judge him eventually. I wonder if there's any chance they'll show him mercy. He hardly deserves it, but for Felix's sake. I can't help hoping there's something left of the man I once knew. It occurs to me that you're a mage.
That just occurred to you.
I meant, you must have been part of the Circle of Magi in the south. Meaning, you were locked away like a criminal, at least until you rebelled. It's such a bizarre notion to me.
It's bizarre to me as well.
I believe this is a moment where we stand in mutual recognition of mankind's folly. It's more surprising that everyone would take the idea of a mage inquisitor so calmly. Maybe it's not calm. Maybe the Antivan crows are swimming in gold from all the contracts on your life. Good luck with that, by the way. Grand fun being the one in charge.
I'd like to ask you about Tevinter.
Ah, yes. Everyone outside the Imperium always seems quite fascinated by it. Probably why they come up with so many ridiculous tales. Flying cows over Minrathous. That's madness. All right, that one's actually true, but the cows didn't have wings. I digress. Anything in particular you wanted to know?
There's an Imperial chantry, isn't there? With its own divine.
You people aren't supposed to talk about the Black Divine, are you? If you mention him outside the Imperium, people make that face. Like you're urinating in public. But yes, we do have the chantry, or a version of it. Night and day comparing it to yours.
Is the Imperial chantry so different from ours?
Not in theory. The main difference is in the whole magic is meant to serve man, not rule over him business. Back home, ruling the unwashed masses is serving them, for the good of the Imperium. Perhaps it started with good intentions, but these days it's academic. The circles are in command.
There are circles of magi in the Imperium.
We don't have dismal little mage prisons, if that's what you mean. They're academies, prestigious ones. We have Templars as well, but they don't cancel spells or whatever your Templars do. They're soldiers.
They don't use lyrium.
Ha! As if there'd be any left for them. They watch for abuse of magic, yes, but only those who are weak or who fall out of favor get dealt with. Mostly they enforce the Magisterium's edicts. The chantry smiles and nods from the sidelines.
Do you really call him the Black Divine?
We don't call him that, oh no. In the Imperium, he's the true divine. The woman sitting on the Sunburst throne is some backwater pretender. It all stems from a disagreement over Andraste. Marvelous, isn't it?
Why would they disagree over Andraste?
It's not my field of expertise, but the Imperium believes Andraste was a mortal woman, a mage. Down south, they say, no, she's the bride of the Maker, ascended to his side, divine provenance, a blah blah blah. We feel better believing Andraste was one of us. Makes executing her less damning, you see. So we elected a man as divine, the South declared war, and we've been feuding cousins ever since.
So, the Imperial Divine is always a man?
All the better to distinguish him from that other one, yes. Don't think there aren't a number of female magisters who bristle at that. Why can't they be divine after all? Same reason you never see a man on the sunburst throne. Because that's how it's always been done. Excellent reasoning.
Do you consider yourself Andrastian?
The big question. It might surprise you that I do consider myself Andrastian. I simply do not believe in the chantry. It is a relic, whether back home or here in the south. Something from a bygone age desperately clinging to relevance. It's not an opinion that makes me popular.
I share your opinion, actually.
That's not surprising, considering what the Inquisition represents. I'll say this. I may not believe in the chantry, but I believe in you.
In me?
That the Maker sent you, whether through Andraste or fate. Cassandra is not wrong. You are what we needed most at the moment we needed it. That's what they will say in ages to come.
That's true. I feel the same.
My, someone's full of themselves, aren't they?
I was just agreeing with you.
Don't agree on my account. A little doubt wouldn't harm the Herald of Andraste. Me? I've seen too much to believe I know everything. The world is bigger than I. Even bigger than you. It laughs at all the things we think we know. The Maker doesn't need me to believe. But I do. The thought of no one at all watching out for us is too frightening.
Let me ask you something else.
So many questions.
Anyone who talks about the Imperium mentions slavery. It's the center of the slave trade.
Ah. That is true.
And did you have slaves?
Not personally, but my family does and treats them well. Honestly, I never thought much about it until I came south. Back home, it's how it is. Slaves are everywhere. You don't question it. I'm not even certain many slaves do.
Well, we don't have slaves in the south.
In the south, you have alienages, slums, both human and elven. The desperate have no way out. Back home, a poor man can sell himself. As a slave, he could have a position of respect, comfort, and could even support a family. Some slaves are treated poorly, it's true. But do you honestly think inescapable poverty is better?
I suppose not. No.
I don't know what it's like to be a slave, true. I never thought about it until I saw how different it was here. But I suspect you don't know either. Nor should you believe that every tale of Tevinter excess is the norm.
It seems strange that an entire empire would be ruled by mages.
Strange? Why are you less qualified to rule than some tart with a fancy crown? Actually, the fiction in the Imperium is that mages don't rule. The Magisterium rules. That Magisters are all mages is considered a convenient technicality.
What is the Magisterium, exactly?
The upper house of the Imperial Senate, and the only part worth having a seat on. Those seats are split among the circles of Magi, the Chantry, and the major families. All mages now. It's odd that outside the Imperium, you use Magister like it applies to every Tevinter mage.
If you're not a Magister, then what are you called? No special title?
I'm an Altus, which is almost as good as a Magister, depending on who you ask.
I've never heard of an Altus.
Upper class. Those families who trace descent from the Dreamers, the first prophets of the old gods. If you're a mage and you're not Altus, then you're later, lower class. If you're not a mage at all, you're Sokarati. That's everyone else. We do love our fancy words.
I thought the Archon ruled over the Imperium.
Well, yes. Technically, he can overrule laws passed by the Magisterium, but that never happens. Even so, he gets to appoint new Magisters, which means all the families vie madly for his favor. Thus, the Archon gets invited to all the parties. The truest path to Tevinter influence, let me tell you.
If it's a fiction, that means mages do rule then.
Yes and no. Let me put it this way. Mages do rule, but not all mages are equal. If you're not from the right family, chances are you don't rule anything. Maybe you're even a slave. The idea that anyone could be a mage, however, keeps the masses placated.
Can anyone be a mage?
Technically. The potential runs mostly in bloodlines, but it's been known to happen. More importantly, commoners believe it can. Tevinter legend is chock full of mage heroes from humble origins. So they hold out hope. Someday my son or my son's son will be a mage. Someday. Poor sods don't realize that means he'll be a quaestor at the arse end of the 100 Pillars, at best.
Being a quaestor isn't a good thing.
I imagine the average non-mage likes to think so. Counting numbers and shuffling papers all day is better than many occupations after all. If you're a second-class citizen among a pack of piranha, however, your outlook changes.
Let me ask you something else.
Of course.
I'm wondering if the Imperium would be a useful ally.
I'd think you'd be more concerned whether or not they'd support the Venatori. They won't. At least, not officially. They'll disavow all knowledge of dangerous cultists. Secretly, many Magisters will rejoice at the idea. And if the South falls to chaos in the meantime, all the better.
It would be in the Imperium's best interest to help. Surely it could use allies.
I think the Imperium gave up on the idea of allies a long time ago. We've been fighting the Qunari for what, 200 years off and on? It's a point of pride that we go it alone. They'll sneer at the South behind their silk handkerchiefs and say, "You've had it easy for far too long." Let's not forget that the Inquisition seems to be an arm of the Orlesian chantry. Anathema so far as they're concerned.
We're not part of the chantry. The chantry opposed the Inquisition's formation.
You think that matters? Don't be silly. The Herald of Andraste. Your very title smacks of the Southern Chantry. You may as well be a heathen. I think they're far more frightened what you'll do if you succeed.
Just how often is blood magic used there?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
That's what any Magister would tell you. They'd be convincingly offended by the notion too. Of course, what people call blood magic here, and what we consider blood magic, are two different things.
What's considered actual blood magic in Tevinter?
Blood magic isn't inherently dangerous. Using your own blood or that of a willing participant, what's the harm? The problem is that what's permitted only gets you so much power. And what if you need more? You always need more. That's where we get into sacrifices and demon summoning. None of that is done. Not officially. Behind closed doors, it's a different story. Real blood magic can give you an edge, a leg up against your opponents. It's safe to assume that any mage of rank does it. The rest are quietly shut out of power, to put it bluntly.
You'd think the Templars would object.
I imagine they did, long ago. Once, their investigations might have been sincere. Then their balls were cut off. Too inconvenient. Nowadays, only the friendless are accused. Most of them probably innocent.
There must be some mages who oppose this.
Of course. I do. And I'm not entirely alone. Occasionally, there'll be a Magister who makes noise. And then the reform talk begins. All very patriotic. Meanwhile, that Magister will be quietly shunned. Chances are, surprise, it's learned he was a Maleficar all along. Most learn to keep quiet. Me? I enjoy the allure of pariahhood.
That's all I wanted to know.
Fair enough.
I should go.
As you wish.